But honestly, it was like an episode of Unwrapped every day. I don't know if any of you have ever watched Food Network growing up. I lived on Food Network. Unwrapped was my favorite show. And reflecting back, seeing that I get to live an episode of Unwrapped almost every day I go into work is really cool for me. It's full circle. So understanding how things make and what I do as a process engineer is making sure that it continues to work the way it should, or finding better ways to do it, or if we're trying to make new products, trying to understand how we can do that and fixing things within the process to make that happen. I think if you're someone that likes fast pace, maybe more on ADD or ADHD, I think you thrive in entrepreneurship because there's always something to do, but at the same time, you also have to focus on different things. So you have to be intentional about when you can delegate things if you can. Sometimes you can't delegate things, so you need to get it done.
Turn this up, turn this up.
Your professional development is one of the keys to your career success. When you combine your desire to grow with actionable steps, your journey to success becomes an incredible reality.
Hi, I'm Paul Faronbi, aka IncrediPaul, and welcome to IncrediPaul Leadership, where I talk to incredible people doing incredible things so we can become the most incredible versions of ourselves. First off, thank you so much for listening to this episode. But I also want you to know that you can also watch this episode on YouTube. Regardless if you're listening or watching this episode, bonus points for doing both. Really appreciate your support. I want you to know that you can also win free merch. So stick around to the end of this episode to get a keyword on how you can get free merch. If you don't want to wait till then, you can pick up free merch by going to the website, or the Be Incredible Starter Pack has a resume, budget template, interview guide, and leadership masterclass, all for free. Pick that up by going to the website. So that was a quick commercial. Let's dive right in. And this episode is a little bit different because I kind of hinted on it on LinkedIn, and some people were interested because I've had a lot of different career experiences, even just in the last year. So I want to talk about those different experiences, kind of the nuances between them and what I enjoy the most, and talk about how you should decide what you should pursue as well. So I'm going to focus on academia, corporate, entrepreneurial life, and startup life. Those are all of those four things are something I experienced just last year. As you can imagine how I was able to do all those things in 1 year. I ask myself that sometimes, and I was also doing them at the same time, if you can believe that. I think I mentioned that in the podcast a few times, but if you have not seen that or heard me say that, doing all of them at the same time. So what I've spent majority of my career has been in corporate or manufacturing settings. So the CPG world, consumer packaged goods world, is what I spent majority of my career in. And what I've realized is it is a small world in the sense that I've been able to work with people or work at the same companies as people multiple times. So I worked with someone at one company, and then I changed companies and then ended up working with them again. So it's a small world in that sense. It was also a large world in there's so many different consumer packaged goods companies that exist out there. And people, if you're not in that world, you might not even understand what does that even mean. Consumer packaged goods. So think about anything that you would see in a big box store, whether it's a Walmart, Sam's Clubs, Costco's, Targets, Dollar General. Any of the things that you see in those stores are consumer packaged goods. And so I've worked for companies exclusively that make stuff at consumer packaged goods. And it's different from what you have different suppliers. So I've had co-ops or internship type activities at companies that make the ingredients that go into making stuff for consumer packaged good companies. So that's a whole different thing there, but I will focus on the CPG world. And the corporate world specifically it's fairly flexible. There can be some red tape sometimes. There's different processes you have to follow, but it's pretty flexible in the sense for, especially the roles I've been in have been travel roles. So it's not been a role that I only come into the office every day and everything is the same consistently. It has been different. So when I worked in St. Louis, I had a few different roles of continuous improvement, traveling like 70% of the time, moved into more technical roles in packaging, 75, 80%, to when I was doing some technical stuff on the process side, I was traveling up to 90% of the time, sometimes 100% of the time, with just the different projects I was on, doing some stuff on the capital side, as well as specific technical SME or subject matter expert work. So that is different in the sense that I have a home base, whether it was in St. Louis when I was doing that for a few years, or right now in Nashville, but then I'll travel to different sites or sometimes different contractors as well. So different contractors or suppliers, I did that more when I was in St. Louis working for Purina. And I got to do a lot of stuff with factory acceptance tests and the site acceptance tests, more so on the capital side. Right now, what I'm doing today is more focused on working internally, making sure that we don't have issues when we're trying to launch different products, or make different changes, or maybe we're trying to validate different equipment. So a lot of different things involved in that. But it's flexible in the sense that it's not the same thing every day. And that is something that I appreciate. On the manufacturing side, I've got to do that when I worked in Albuquerque, as well as a different role in St. Louis, where I'm at one site all the time, didn't really travel. Other than Albuquerque, I traveled a couple times to corporate. That's when I was at General Mills. And I did that, but it wasn't specifically for the job I was doing. It was more so for conferences, professional development. One was with different employee resource groups. They all got together. I got to travel for that. Another one, I traveled up to corporate because I helped to plan a conference for our early career development, ECDs as we call them. So different ones, whether there was one on the manufacturing side or logistics side, we all got together and we had a conference, it was really cool. I think there was like 30 to 40 of us from around the country, all at corporate for I think 2.5 days up in Minneapolis. So that role, like I said, is not really focused on travel, but I got to have some travel involved in it. And then when I was in St. Louis working for Henkel, I did a couple of stuff for recruiting side of things and went to a couple different universities. I went to another site, but that was different in the sense that I was very much focused on one site. I worked as a continuous improvement manager there and got to practice my leadership a lot while I was in that role, because I had a lot of people on the floor, whether they're operators or maintenance, really like looking to me for leadership or help, whether it was different trainings I was leading on manufacturing, TPM type work, clean and spec type. And I'm getting too technical, but I was doing a lot of these different things, really focused on the specific site. So those two things, even though they're both in the consumer packaged goods world, the corporate world, if you will, very different in how that worked. But honestly, it was like an episode of Unwrapped every day. I don't know if any of you have ever watched Food Network growing up. I lived on Food Network. Unwrapped was my favorite show. And reflecting back, seeing that I get to live an episode of Unwrapped almost every day I go into work is really cool for me. It's full circle. So understanding how things make, and what I do as a process engineer is making sure that it continues to work the way it should, or finding better ways to do it. Or if we're trying to make new products, trying to understand how we can do that and fixing things within the process to make that happen. So that was one aspect. Also, what I've done is working in academia, and that was more so when I was in college. I did 4 years of undergraduate research, 8 semesters, I should say, because I actually took a semester off when I worked in more of a co-op experience. And then in that experience, I realized that was not something I wanted to do, which I have said before. Doing internships, co-ops is a good opportunity. It's a set amount of time. You can find out if you want to do something, if you don't want to do something. And understanding that you don't want to do something, I think, is just as valuable. And it's helpful if you can do it when it's in a predefined time that you're doing, whether it's an internship or a co-op. Obviously, in full time, it's becoming less and less prevalent for people to be career or lifers at a particular company. And I think there's a lot of different speculation about why that is, but I think we're just realizing that we want to have different experiences. There are companies where there's more and more people have been there for a long time because they're really intentional about allowing you to move around in different businesses and get different experiences even while staying in the same company. So that's something that you can think about when you're trying to understand where you want to go. On the academia side, like I mentioned, I worked in research. The research I worked on was trying to regenerate nerves on the peripheral nervous system using transdifferentiated mesenchymal stem cells. So there's a lot of different papers are written on that. I didn't directly write any of the papers. I did have an opportunity to write one on a smaller project that I had that kind of was tangential to this work. I didn't end up writing it because at that point I was kind of in between whether I was going to go the grad school route or go the industry route, and then I just didn't make the time to do it. In reflection, I probably could have done it, but I just didn't end up doing it. But that world is different in the sense that it's definitely a lot of focus on grants and writing, and there's a whole mantra of publish or perish that happens. And then a lot of times, if you're in this world, like you go through the PhD route, postdoc route. Eventually, if you get to a certain point, you can have your own lab, build your lab. I've had friends have the opportunity to do that, and it's really cool. It's really exciting for them, but it's also it's a lot of pressure because everything is on you. And balancing research and teaching can be tough. And so for me, I knew that I wanted to focus on the research side. Was not really did not really want to do much teaching, which is funny in retrospect because on the podcast, I feel like I do a lot of teaching now, whether it's through like different interviews or even in this sense that I'm just telling you about different career opportunities that you can consider if you're in STEM. Because I think research is something that people don't really understand a lot about, but it builds a lot of good competencies that they're transferable to anything. Honestly, just understanding how to have a good plan in place, developing your writing skills, interacting with different types of people, whether when you're in undergrad, you interact with a grad student, you have a principal investigator, which is a professor, you have different colleagues, like you're reading different papers, collaborating on different things. So there's a lot of skills that you have in your research or while you're doing undergraduate research or maybe graduate level research that are transferable. You just have to be intentional about it. So that's one piece. The other piece is entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is fast paced. I've definitely joked on the podcast before that if you don't like your 9 to 5, you can quit it, become an entrepreneur, and just work 24/7 because that's what it is as an entrepreneur. Everything is on you. You are the leader of the business. Everything hinges on you, whether it does well or doesn't do well. And that can be exciting in the sense that you are completely in charge, but also terrifying in the sense that you are completely in charge. So if things don't go well, it's on you. And so you have to lead yourself well. So talk about Gen Z professionals in STEM and for this podcast. And I think whether you are specifically in STEM or even entrepreneurship, leadership is definitely something that is relevant for you. And if you're an entrepreneur, you need to understand how to lead yourself well because the business really hinges on you. But with entrepreneurship, I have done both the nonprofit and the for-profit realm. And the nonprofit, I would say, functions similarly to academia, not quite the same, but there's a lot of grant writing and really fundraising and different things because you are not-for-profit. So you have to understand and show your value without actually you're creating a product that people want, but you can't charge for it. So there's nuances with that. And so I've been on the journey of being a two-time founder nonprofit, actually three-time founder because two different nonprofits and then a for-profit. So it is an interesting world. It is definitely a world that is not for the faint of heart. I think if you're someone that likes fast pace, maybe more on ADD or ADHD, I think you thrive in entrepreneurship because there's always something to do, but at the same time, you also have to focus on different things. So you have to be intentional about when you can delegate things if you can. Sometimes you can't delegate things, so you need to get it done. But those are some of the key things there. And even with that, it can be hard to manage. So the last one I'll mention is a startup life. Pretty similar to entrepreneurship in this, but in the sense that it's not totally on you, and it can vary whether it's more venture capital, VC backed, or maybe it's bootstrapped and they raise the money on their own, and where different valuations and things like this. So I would say I only know this on the outside looking in. I worked at a startup last year, so I do a lot of career coaching for One Salting, working with the founders, Jonathan Javier and Jerry Lee. And so they're incredible. I've been following their stories for a while and highly recommend using their services. I mean, I was leading their career coaches for a few towards the end of last year. I was doing all those things. So nothing but great things to say about them. But that's definitely a slower pace than doing if you were entrepreneur yourself, slower in the sense that you're not necessarily doing everything. There's still plenty of stuff to do. But if you are trying to determine what's best for you, you need to understand if you like a slower pace or not. Some people want stuff that is more methodical and planned out. Other people just want to hit the ground running and just go, go, go. And I think understanding what is the best for you is what you have to do some reflection. It doesn't hurt to just try it. Would say, especially if you're in college, right after college, I think a startup is a good opportunity to learn a lot of things very quickly. I guess there is a lot of risks that come with startup because it is I think what the definition of startup is really like in the first 5 years of the business. So it may or may not last, but you're able to learn a lot of things very quickly. And if there's some venture capital involved with a startup, it's a little bit safer. You also have some level of autonomy of what you want to do. But if you value formal education and research, then academia is definitely the way where to go. It's a little bit more rigid, more structured, strict guidelines of what you have to do, what you need to do. But whatever you choose, you can also do multiple things. Like I mentioned, I am an engineer and also an entrepreneur, focusing on the for-profit with IncrediPaul, trying to build out things with the podcast community, and speaking. I still do some coaching, but that has been deprioritized for now, really just focusing on podcasting and speaking. Along with what I do as an engineer, I love what I do as an engineer, getting to be involved in creating some of the products that you get to see every day. And I'm someone that geeks out about going to the store and seeing the products on the shelf. So that's perfect for me. But it's okay to try different things. You don't have to settle on just one. I was doing 4 things last year. I would not recommend doing that, but it is an option if you want to do more than one thing. Just wrapping things up, I want to make sure I talk about the fun fact. And this fun fact is that IncrediPaul actually started off focused on career workshops and career coaching. So that kind of makes sense now if you think about it, while I was doing some career coaching and a lot of stuff at One Salting last year, because that just tapped into stuff I had started off with. And with any business, especially entrepreneurship, there's a tendency to evolve over the years. So I've been definitely more focused on leadership and personal growth. But at the beginning was more focused on career workshops and coaching. And the first workshop I ever gave as officially with IncrediPaul was for Indiana University. They had a quote tea time. So this is the timing of it. I think it was like at 11 a.m. or something. So tea time session with Indiana University in April of 2020. So the key word for today is tea. So if you email to contact@incredipaul.org, but you have to make sure you're subscribed to the newsletter. So if you subscribe, you'll get an email, reply back with that keyword. If you go to the website, you can figure out how you can subscribe to the newsletter. And then you can get some free merch. Be entered into a drawing for free merch. But thank you so much for taking the time. Like I said, I've been trying to do different things with these solo episodes. Make sure you're getting some background into me as well as just learning more about different opportunities. So just going to highlight different types of fields you can go into. I can definitely go deeper on some of them if you would want to. I would say entrepreneurship and the corporate one is definitely what I know the most about. But key thing is to make sure you take the time to learn more about various careers. Don't be afraid to reach out to people who are in those careers, ask the questions. Don't be afraid to try it either. You're not married to the career. You can change and do different things. You can do multiple things. Like I mentioned, I'm doing multiple things. Take the time to ask questions, network intentionally, keep learning, and you too can be incredible.
Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time. And be incredible. Incredible.